Hello and welcome to this new SAP S/4HANA Cloud Knowledge Snippet. In today's snippet we will be revisiting a topic that has been quite popular in the past, and that topic is that of workflow approvals in the context of procurement. Now when we look at the approvals workflow that is available in SAP S/4HANA Cloud, depending on whether we're looking at an overall release strategy for requisitions or at an item level requisition, there are different ways to deduce and route the workflow item to the correct approver. Now that could be the manager of the workflow initiator. It could also be the manager of the workflow initiator. And if we look at an item level approval process, you can also determine the approver based on the cost object manager, the person that is responsible for the cost object. So for example, if you have a purchase requisition that has an account assignment to cost center, you could very well route the approval to the person responsible for that cost center. However, sometimes those approval rules are not always cookie clear cut. And that will vary from organization to organization. By that I mean that a person could be in one context a level 1 approver, in another context becomes a level 2 approver. And it could also be that, as you know, we are in a very fast-moving world. People come and people go in organizations. So if you are going to be having lots of movements around your employees, it probably is not a good idea to have approvals, deductions done in code. You want to be able to be fairly flexible here. You want to have something like a business rules framework type table where you can kind of say, well, if my requisition has this cost center and this amount in this plant or in this company, then I want this person to be the approver. So that's what we're going to be looking at in today's snippet. And to illustrate this particular scenario, the context here is that, for example, we have a cost center or an approval that's based on the cost center, for example, but we do not want to have the person responsible for the cost center being the person providing the approvals. So in this case, we're going to have this person here, which is named Tom Appleseed, and he's going to create a requisition for 2 items. Now, the first item of that requisition will go to this person for the level 1 approval. And if that level 1 approval is granted, it'll go to a level 2 approval to Jane Smith. The other item that he'll have will have a different cost center, and that will go to, this time, Jane Smith as the level 1 approval, and then go to another person for the level 2 approval. So already here you can see that the level 1 approver can vary depending on the cost center. Similarly, the level 2 approval can vary as well. But like I said, we want to be flexible here. We don't want to have the names or the user IDs of these people buried deep down in code. We want that to be fairly flexible so that if either of these people leave the organizations, I can very quickly change their names in the approval tables that we will be maintaining. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we're back in SAP S/4HANA Cloud. Now, for the sake of speed, I have already created an approvals tables. So for that, I've gone into the custom business objects functionality, and I've created a table called approvals table, defined essentially 3 key fields, or actually a few more, which are the approving level. So this is where I will indicate the level of approval. So it's level 1, level 2, level 3, and so on. The cost object, which is going to be a cost center. The approving user, so the person that will be providing or receiving the work item to provide an approval. And I'm also adding a little bit of code to get the approving user's name. So how does that table look like when we actually maintain information in there? So as I said, I've already generated the object. And this is what this approval tables looks like. So again, this is a custom business object, and so the entry ID, actually we don't really care, that's just a internal number. So what we're saying here is that if the requisition has for cost object, so for cost center 10101301, and the first level and we're looking at the first level of approval, then the approver should be CB998, which is myself. And once I approve this requisition, it should then go on to level 2, still for the same cost object, to Jane Smith. Now, as I said, we have a requisition, or we will have a requisition with 2 items with 2 different cost centers, just so that we can see how we can flip-flop between those 2 approvers. So we have these 2 lines that are relevant for this particular cost center, this cost object, and these 2 lines that are relevant for this cost object. So if I have another requisition item on a different cost center, which is 10101302. In this case, Jane Smith will become the first level approver, and once she approves, the requisition will then be routed to myself for the second level of approval. So of course, your table, if you were going to use this table, could have many different parameters. So for example, you could have the amount in there. You could also have, for example, the validity date, if you wanted to plan a succession, for example. So up until that date, Jane Smith will be first level approver, and from that date onwards, or from a date thereafter, I would become the approver. It really is up to you how you want to maintain this table. This is a custom business object, and it has to be suited to your requirements. Now, the beauty of this particular table and how it's going to be used in my overall workflow approval process is that, as I said, I don't need to do changes in the approval workflow. I don't need to call on an ABAPer or programmer to change the code of the BADI logic that we will add. This could very easily be done by a central user or a business user. So as an example, if he needed to change that this approval level was no longer going to be done by Pascal René, then he could simply go into here and there indicate the user ID of that particular user. Now, I know that I've also added a little bit of code to go and retrieve the name associated to this approver, just to make sure that the number I've indicated there is a fully fledged and accepted number in the system. So this is going to become, in effect, my business rules table that will help me deduce who is supposed to approve what in what context. Okay, so this is the table that we have done. Now, the next things that we want to do here is we want to obviously create a workflow. We want to be able to trigger for certain requisitions to be determined via workflow. So to do that, we are going to go to manage workflows for purchase requisitions, and we will be doing a release at the item level. So if I have, for example, 2 items in my purchase requisitions, then it will fire off 2 work items. So I'm just going to add, I'm going to name this, so this will be purchase approvals with business rules table. And to trigger this particular workflow, now bearing in mind as well that I do have colleagues working in the same system, so we're going to say it's going to be requisitions created by self-service procurement. We'll also add the plant being 1010, which is the German plant, and we'll also restrict this to if the account assignment is of type cost center. So if I create a requisition that has these parameters being applicable, then that will be the starting point for selecting this workflow or not. So now I'm going to add the determination of the recipients. So I will say that we are looking for the release. I'm not interested in the accounting object. I'm going to go with agent determination by Betty. And I'm also going to add here the purchase requisition group is going to be 003. And if I'll restart the workflow if it's rejected. Okay, so that's perfect. I'm going to add that one, and then I'm going to add a second level of approvals. So again, release of requisition item. Again, it's an agent determination by Betty. This time I'm not going to set up any kind of preconditions because I already have the precondition that was set in the previous step, which was if the purchasing group was 003. So I'm just going to add that. So here we go. Let's have a quick look. It's all okay. So self-service, plant 1010, account assignment K, purchasing group 003. We have 2 levels of approvals. This is really important, right? I could also have additional ones, but you'll see how this becomes important when we code the Betty, because this is a new functionality that came in with 1805, in that you can now track the level of this determination inside the Betty. So I'm going to have 2 levels, and I'm just going to say save. Now I'm going to also say activate. So if I start doing requisitions with the parameters that I've indicated, they're going to start going into approvals, but obviously I haven't yet defined who the approvers should be. So we need to go and do that really quickly. So the next thing that we need to go and do is go to the custom fields and logic application. And what we're going to do here is we're going to add some custom logic. So I can see that one has already been done for sales. And what we are looking for is the Betty determination. So let's see, where is that? Here we go. Procurement agent determination in flexible workflow. And then we have the Betty. Now you also have here an indication that you should no longer be using the Betty workflow agents, which was the first release that came out. And what we want to use is workflow agent determination v2. So let's go for that one. We'll give it a quick name. We'll say purchasing doc. Doc approvals. Okay, we can keep that as well here. We'll just say create. And that's going to create the shell for me. Now you can see that there is a draft logic that has been added to the Betty logic of my custom logic that I've just added. And essentially this, I'll quickly show you, this is the novelty that came in with 1805, in that you can now track approval levels. So by this sample code that we have provided here, you can already maintain up to 4 levels. You could also add 5, 6, however how many levels it is that you have. And essentially, if we look at the code, it's saying that approval level 1, it's saying that the approver for level 1 is the user Purchase Manager 1. On level 2, it's going to be Purchase Manager 2, Manager 3, Manager 4. So if this was going to be something that is suitable to you, then you could just change the code of the Purchase Manager to be that of the user within your organization that would be approving for level 1, here for level 2, here for level 3, and so on and so forth. You can also, of course, add your own business logic to determine how you want this particular approver to be determined. And that's exactly what we are going to do. So what we are going to do is we're just going to get rid of all this, because we will be adding our own logic. So I've prepared one before. And so there are certain parts of the proposed or example business logic that have I've kept, of course, things such as the structures, internal table names. But what I have also added in terms of logic is that I have added some code to retrieve the cost center of the purchase requisition that I will create. And then on the basis of that cost center and the approval level within which I am, I'm going to reference my table, which is the approvals table, to go and fetch the approver. So if we have a quick look at the logic here, we're saying we want to select single cost center from purchase account assignment API 01. So this is a standard SAP CDS that is available in your system. And what we're saying is that we want to, from this particular CDS, we want to retrieve the cost center, put that into a variable where the purchase requisition number and item are the ones that I'm looking at, i.e. the purchase requisition that I've just created. Now I've added the purchase requisition item because, like I said, I'm going to create a requisition with 2 items with different cost centers, so they will have different triggering rules. The next thing that I'm doing here is I'm selecting the approving user from the table YY1 approvals table. So approvals table is that custom business object that I created, and I'm essentially saying that I want to fetch the approver user ID where the cost center is the one that has been added to the requisition, which is this one here, and the approval level is the one that I'm currently looking at. In this case could be 1 or 2. Like I said, I've only got 2 levels of approvals, but you could of course have many more in your company specific workflows. And then I've also kept the last bits of the proposed code, which is essentially that which keeps track of the level at which we're at and updates the internal agent work item table based on the rules that we've provided to it. So now that I've indicated that, there's a couple of more things that I also need to do. I need to add a filter because this particular logic is going to be applicable for requisitions. And if I go to the BADI documentation, it tells me business object is purchase requisitions, or I could have any one of the other ones that are available here. But this is going to be specific for requisitions, this logic. So I'm just going to say the business object is going to be equal to purchase requisition, and I'm going to save this particular addition. I'm going to save my draft. I'm not going to test it because obviously I don't have a requisition yet to test it. So we're going to be doing this without a net. So let's just go ahead and say publish, and your draft logic is going to be published. Yes. Okay, so that was quick. The logic has been published. This is the code that will be evaluated when I create the requisition. Okay, so let's get out of here. And what I've also set up is I've added 2 additional users. Now I'm going to have one user here, which is going to be Tom Appleseed, and Tom Appleseed is going to be the person putting in a requisition with 2 items. And on this side here, we have Jane Smith, who will be the approver for 1 requisition item, the level 1 requisition, and then she'll become the approver of the second requisition once I have approved it. So let's go ahead and create this requisition. So Tom logs onto the system, and so the material or the object really is irrelevant here. We're just trying to get something in. So we'll do 1 item at €5 and we'll request 10. So, and we're not really bothered about the supplier. So that's been added. I'm going to add that same material again, this time a bit more expensive, €10, 10 kilos again, and add that to the cart. So I'm going to have 2 items in my cart. So let's go to the card and maintain the cost centers as per what we had defined earlier on. So let's go to the first item. We also want to change the purchasing group to 003. If you recall, that's what we indicated as being the trigger for the workflow item. And so one cost center is 10101301. Let's have a quick look at our approvals table. So first cost center is 10101301. So that means that this particular requisition item as a first level approval is going to go to myself. And going back to the requisition, we're just going to say, yep, we're going to save that. And then we're going to update the second item. Again, we're going to say that the purchasing group is 003, and we are going to change the account assignment to the cost center, the second cost center that we have in our table, which is this one here. And in this case, the first level approval will be Jane Smith, and I will become the second approving level of that requisition. Oops. Okay, let's go back here. We're going to save, go back to the cart. Now we're happy with the information that's in this cart, and we're just going to say order. Requisition 8 has been created. Now let's go back to the Fiori Launchpad for Tom Appleseed, and we should see that this requisition we've just created is awaiting approval. That's correct. So let's now go into my inbox. So if I go to my inbox, I should hopefully be seeing one item. Here we go. We have one item to be approved, and we can see that this is our requisition number and the item is 00010. What I'm going to do before I approve that is I'm going to go to the Jane Smithers account, and if we look at Jane Smithers inbox, we can see that there's already something there. Now she should have the other item to start off with. Here we go. So we can see that Jane, she's received the second item to validate. So it's the same requisition number, but she's got number 20, item number 20 to release, and I've got number 10. So let's say that Jane is going to say, yep, I approve. Okay to purchase. We'll submit that. And her inbox is then going to get cleared. There is nothing left for Jane to approve. I go back into my own inbox and I'm going to refresh it, and I should now see, here we go, now the second item appear, which is the one that Jane approved just before. So I now have, for that same requisition, item 10 and 20 to approve. So I'll look at item number 10. I'm going to say, yep, go for it. Okay. We submit. So that'll disappear from my workload. And if we go back to Jane's account, she now gets the second level approval for that item to deal with. And again, she's going to say, yep, I'm okay with that. And she submits that approval also. I now do the last and second level approval of the requisition that Jane approved just before, and we'll say approve. I'm going to submit that, and now my workload is completely cleared off. So let's see what that looks like now for Tom Appleseed. If we go back to Tom Appleseed, so he's just going to say go refresh my work list, and we should now see, there we go, that the requisition has been approved. So there you go. This was a very simple example showing how you can define your own workflow determination criteria, and also how easily it is for you to be able to maintain those business rules. You don't need to have a developer that will go into the custom logic of your baddies as we've seen it here. The logic is fairly open, fairly generic. We are referencing our tables to determine this information. So it's very flexible for your users to be able to adapt your organizational structure and organizational decision rules into the approvals framework of requisitions in this particular case. So there you go. I hope this has been instructive, helpful. If you like this video, then like it. Don't forget to subscribe and switch on notifications to be advised of new recordings. Thank you.